Alright, welcome to the Critical Focus channel and today's review of the Sepulchral Guard. And I'm gonna do this a little bit differently because I got some feedback over on Reddit from a gentleman that I've now forgotten the name of, but I'm very thankful for the comment because it kind of was a bit of an eye-opener for me. So he said that thanks for all the content and so on and so forth, really polite, and then he said, but maybe it would be of more use for me as a beginner to not get arbitrary judgments on the cards, but like more how can I use this card, and especially think given that the Rivals is a popular format, we don't really have the luxury in that format to like pass on a card. We have to include every card, so how can I make the most out of this kind of niche card? So I think I'm doing it a little bit differently here moving forward. So I'm really thankful for this change of pace for my reviews here. So let's get starting with the Sepulchral Guard. So as you all know, the Sepulchral Guard is a Shadespire Warband that has been kind of vamped here and updated to have a functioning Rivals deck with 6 searches and slight buffs on the fighter cards as well. So let's just start with looking at the actual fighter cards then. The Sepulchral Warden is still 2 move and 4 wounds, but his defense characteristic has changed to shields now. So all of the fighters that actually have shield on the model now have shield as a defense characteristic. His attack, his Bone Shriver Spear is 2 range 2 hammers 2 damage, just like before. And inspired he goes to 3 damage, but does not gain the extra hammer that he used to get. So some buffs and some nerfs here, and his inspired condition reads 2 more friendly fights have raise counters, or you give an inspired friendly fighter a raise counter. So slight change there. The action reads choose up to 2 friendly fights. The chosen fights each make 1 move action. That's also a slight change because before you couldn't do it with fighters that already had move tokens, but now you can. And the other action reads choose 1 friendly fighter that is out of action, place the chosen fighter on an empty starting hex in your territory, then give the fighter 1 raise counter. Yeah, so that's unchanged basically. And inspired doesn't really change much. Champion is pretty much unchanged. He's also dodge still. 3 hammers with cleave. Inspired, really nasty. The Harvester is also dodge still. 2 swords 2 damage, scything 3 swords 2 damage inspired. Prince of Dust has seen a boost here because he's 2 damage uninspired and then 3 hammers 2 damage inspired. So now he's 3 hammers 2 damage inspired with knockback and stagger, and his defense characteristic has changed to shields. All the petitioners are also shields, otherwise they are unchanged. So let us then move over to the search objectives, as we always like to start with. But maybe I'll do it differently here. I haven't really planned this, so I'm gonna look at each objective and then I'm gonna like search the gambits and upgrades to see how things synergize really. So let's check here. So the first objective is called Battle Without End, and this was an end phase objective before. It reads, search scores immediately after an activation or power step in which you gave a second or subsequent friendly fighter a raise counter in the same phase. So this can be done either with the Warden's action, as long as he's not charged, because you can't do fighter-specific actions when you're charged, unless every fighter has a charge token. So pay attention to not charging the Warden too early, or at all maybe, I don't know. You could also do this with playing, for example, Restless Dead. Choose a friendly fighter other than the Sepulchral Warden that's out of action. Place the chosen fighter on enemy starting X and give it the raise counter. So you could score it by doing the Warden's action or playing this card. Is there any other card? Yeah, I think there is one actually. I think this one, Petitioner's Oath, uses often an activation step in which this fighter was taken out of action. You can do so even though this fighter is out of action. Place the fighter on an empty starting X in your territory, then give this fighter 1 raise counter, then break this card. So you can score it with the Warden's action, Restless Dead, Deploy, or the Petitioner's Oath card, right? So it's obviously a pretty strong card. So you have to do it with a second or subsequent fighter in the same phase, but that's pretty easy to accomplish. So it's a good card, right? Next we have Grave Reprisal. Such duel scores immediately after an activation step if a friendly fighter's attack action took an enemy fighter action, and that friendly fighter had one or more race counters. That's also fairly easy to do. Generally speaking, I don't like taking out of action cards because they can be a bit slow, especially when the damage output isn't that high. But it's bound to happen sooner or later, and you will have a lot of fighters with race counters, so this is gonna be fairly easy to do, right? Next we have Land of the Dead. Scores immediately after an opponent's activation step, which requires you to hold 2 more objectives with a total sum of 6 or more. So for example, objective 2 and 4, or 3 and 5. So is it easy? I think the value here can be a bit tricky, and you don't have dominion over where all of the objectives end up. You can at best have dominion over 3 of them, and you might as well have 1, 2 and 3 in your command. But yeah, there should be a bit of push tech in this deck, right? And if you're playing Nemesis, make sure to include push tech, especially if you're playing objectives. You should include push tech, but I think always including push tech is strong, right? So my reasoning for including push tech is always, and why it's always valid is, I mean, if you're playing aggressive, you can push onto an opponent to be able to do an attack without charging or what have you. You could put, and as a defensive team, you could push away to force opponents to charge. And as a defensive hold team, you could push onto an objective. There's so many, or you could push up with another fighter to be assisting and then make a charge with another fighter, for example, to score objectives that require assists or just increase the accuracy of attacks, right? So push tech is always something that you should consider if you are building a deck. But where were we? Yeah, holding 2 objectives. Yeah, we have like this one, no end to our duty. Choose a friendly fighter with 1 more move tokens. The chosen fighter makes 1 move action, so that could get them on 2 objectives. The inexhaustible warriors increases our move. That could also help get us into position. Pitiless Command is a great card to achieve this. Choose a friendly fighter with 1 more race counters. Push the chosen fighter up to excess. Yeah. Frightening Speed helps us get into position. Ancient Commander is a card that helps us get into position because then the Warden can force 3 friendly fighters to move. Yeah, so we have a lot of stuff that can help score this card, and I think holding 2 objectives isn't all that much, and I think the value, it's a bit tricky, but you could certainly achieve it. Then we have Skills Unforgotten, which you do by killing someone with a leader. This is a bit of a trap card because it requires you to really commit with your leader, and your leader should be staying back, racing stuff and forcing moves, right? And I mean, yeah, if you have a free swing, sure, but you don't really want to go charging with your leader anytime soon. So I think this is, yeah, it's certainly doable. He's doing 3 damage with 2 hammers, and if you can certainly set up assists. So doing it isn't the hard part. Just your general game plan doesn't really evolve around committing with the leader, but that said, it's not unscorable, but it's going to be one of the weaker searches here. Then we have They Keep Coming, which is a search tool for when you give a friendly fighter a race counter and 1 or more other friendly fighters each have 1 more race counter. That's obviously really easy. You could start the second round by just raising someone, and then you will be sure to have already raised someone in the first round, right? So it's super easy objective to score. Undying Watchman, it's 2 glory search for your Warband holding 2 or more objectives after an opponent's activation step. And 1 or more of those objectives is in enemy territory. And this isn't all that hard, really. You should be having 3 or 4 fights on objective most of the time, and holding 1 in the opponent's half after their activation. It sounds a bit tricky, but I don't think it is all that hard, actually. Especially now that we have like a general +1 move card that like persists for the entire round. And the Frightening Speed helps us get there. And we'll also have this reaction that's called Startling Reformation, which you play after you give a friendly fighter a race counter. Then you place the fighter in an empty hex in enemy territory. So that also helps you get into position, right? yeah, you get a charge token, but the Warden can still move you with his action. So I think that should be really scored with Undying Watchman. Alright, so let's move over to the end phases here. First up we have a challenge and answer. Score is in an end phase if there are more enemy fights out of action than there are friendly fights out of action. I think this is a pretty good card. I mean, you keep raising stuff, and you have now also a card called the Warden's Command, which you can do in the last activation. When you give the Warden a charge token, then you get to raise 2 guys, right? So you should be able to keep up with the losses of enemy fighters to have less losses than they. And 2 glory is pretty nice for this card, right? Yeah, it kind of forces your activations a bit. But, I mean, in the 3rd round you should definitely have less fights out of action than your opponent. Unless you're playing against another race warband, but generally you aren't. So you should be able to score this thing. I think it's a pretty good card. Then we have Eternal Legions for 2 glory. Scores in an end phase if 3 or more friendly fights are each in no one's and or enemy territory. This is pretty good, right? 3 fighters in enemy or no man's territory. Maybe place an objective in no man's territory to help kind of synergize this with other stuff, right? Yeah, it probably requires you to raise a bit to have that many bodies forward, but should be doable. I think 2 glories are fair for this card. Invigorated Dead is 1 glory for an end phase if the number of surviving inspired friendly fights is equal to or greater than the round number. That should also be really doable, right? It's just 1 glory, but it's easy enough to score. So if you raise 1 and that guy is surviving at the end of the 1st round, you score it, right? So it's really simple. Lay claim to it all is 1 glory for holding holding more objectives than each other warband. It's just 1 glory for a card that has like similar cards being 2 glory, but it's very easy to do with this warband, so maybe it shouldn't be more than 1. March of the Dead is 2 glory for 5 or more fighters having move and or charge tokens. This is obviously a bit tricky because you need to have 5 guys alive, and when you raise them they generally don't come back with move tokens. But I mean, as soon as you get Ancient Commander upgrade up, you can move 3 at a time. This card has been kind of tricky before, and I think it's still kind of tricky. Yeah, it's gonna be a bit hard. It's obviously scoreable, but if you need to raise people to score other stuff, this might not synergize well with that. Yeah, so it might be a case that you don't have enough actions to actually accomplish it. So that being said, it's not unscoreable, but yeah. Retake what is ours is 3 glory for holding 3 objectives, and 1 or more of those objectives is in enemy territory. So it's basically supremacy with a slight or hard twist. I think it's easy enough for 3 glory. Holding 3 with this warband should be a piece of cake, and 1 of those being in enemy territory or no one's territory isn't all that hard. That should definitely be doable. So let's wrap up the objectives there. So let's then take a look at deploys and the upgrades rather speedfully, because we've already touched upon several of the cards while talking about how stuff synergizes and what cards helps what objective and so on and so forth. First up we have Bone Shrapnel, which has seen a nerf, because this used to be ping damage back to an attacker all over the board, but this now reads placed during an enemy fight's attack action that took an adjacent friendly fighter out of action. After the out of action check, deal 1 damage to the enemy fighter. So it's nerfed, but it's still very reliable ping damage, and it's bound to happen. And helps with some vital damage output that the warband might be lacking here. Ceaseless Attack is a great card. You play it after an activation step in which a friendly fighter made 1 or more attack actions. Then you choose another friendly fighter. The chosen fighter makes 1 attack action. So be sure to, when you have this card on hand, line up 2 fighters to have eligible attacks, and then do it right. So make sure that you have 2 like really accurate attacks lined up. Like for example, like this the champion and the like Inspired Harvester or the Prince of Dust to do double whammy, to kill off a single fighter or potentially kill off 2 different fighters. That could be really, really nasty. Then we have Inexhaustible Warriors. That's a +1 move to all fighters for the entire round. That's a great card and sorely needed for this warband that has very low move. Helps to get onto vital objectives. So very good card. No End to Our Duty is choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more move tokens, and then you can make another move as like a free ploy move, but you still get an extra move token. That's also really useful to get into position to score those hold cards, right? So just make sure to do it in the right order, because if you're supposed to hold after opponent's activation, so you do it before they activate, right? Yeah, so make sure to time it right. Then we have Pitless Command, choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more race counters, push the chosen fighter up to 2x. So obviously really important to maybe back off from an incoming attack or push onto an objective, so you can use it in a variety of ways, right? So really strong to push 2, but only for raced fighters. Restless Dead, you choose a fighter other than the Warden, and you place the chosen fighter on an empty starting X in your territory, and then you get a race counter and the charge token. But the charge token isn't really that big of a deal, because you can be moved with the Warden's action anyway. It kind of hurts for like the champion or any real damage dealer to have a charge token, but it is what it is. Helps keeping up with the losses to score that. What's it called? Yeah, challenge unanswered, for example. Then we have Startling Reformation, helps to score holding in enemy territory. Play it after you raise a fighter, and you can push them, place them in an empty starting X in enemy territory instead of your own territory. You still get the charge token, but that's not a big deal, as I said before. Terrifying Scream is a push for an enemy fighter within 2 hexes of 1 or more friendly fighters. This used to be just a push an enemy fighter, so even stronger, like it's the distraction, right? This is still very, very good though, because you're bound to have fighters all over the place, and having an enemy fighter within 2 hexes of 1 or more of your fighters is something that is bound to happen. Necromancer Command requires the leader to be alive, which just lets you do a missed attack 1 more time. Obviously very useful. It's not the main focus of the warband, but it's still a strong card. Worthless Chef. Friendly petitions have no bounty. That's pretty nasty, right? So you opponents don't get any free glory for killing 2 wound fighters. But it only lasts until they actually kill it. That's a pretty nasty card, right? Then we have the upgrades. Frightening Speed helps you get into position with +2 moves, sorely needed for this warband. No vitals is -1 damage. For attack actions that target this fighter to minimum 1, other than attack actions with cleave and knockback though. So it's so. It certainly helps, right? Depends on the warband. Some warband has plenty of cleave going around. So Undying is +1 wound, just general +1 wound. Works for the leader, works for the minions. Yeah, everyone can benefit from a +1 wound. It's a great card. Familiar Face is bound to petitioners, and that means that they get spend glory. It's not a big deal though, because I mean, the searches are so strong in most decks that people will have more glory than they actually can spend. So getting spend glory isn't all that big of a deal, because the most important part is that they get glory for your fighters, not that they get spent or unspent. So it's not. I'm not a huge fan of this card, but it's kind of annoying, I guess. The leader has the Ancient Commander upgrade, which means that he can choose 3 fighters instead of 2 to make move actions. That's also very, very strong to help get into vital positions to score hold cards, right? Deathly Charge is for the champion, +1 damage on the charge. Not bad. He will then have 3 hammers, 3 damage with cleave inspired. That's rather nasty, but it's only for charges. Legacy of Dust is for the Warden or the Prince, which means +1 damage to range 1 made by petitioners within 2 hexes of this fighter. It's not useless, but the petitioners will generally not be your main damage dealers, but one of them will have then 3 swords, 2 damage, which is nothing to scoff about. So yeah, if you set it up right, it can be really nice. So you just pay attention to, you have to be within 2 when you do the attack, so not just when you start the activation. So you can't be within 2 and then charge away and get the +1 damage. You just have to be within 2 when you make the attack. Then we have Petitioner's Oath, which I talked about earlier, which is your reaction to place the fighter back when it's taken out of action. And you can use your reaction even if you are killed, right? So place this fighter on an empty starting X in your territory, then you give this fighter 1 race counter, no charge token, so, and then you break the card. It's really nice to keep up with losing fighters, right? So yeah, it's definitely useful. Spark of Independence is also for the Petitioners, +1 wound and +1 dice to attack action. So if you get that Legacy of Dust, so you could potentially have then 4 swords, 2 damage. Yeah, that's pretty nice, right? But this is destroyed after this fighter is taken out of action. Let's pay attention to that little sentence there. The Warden's Command is the last upgrade here. With this upgrade, you can do an action. You will get the charge token for doing so, but you can then place 2 friendly fighters that are out of action on empty starting X's in your territory. That's really, really good. That's a great last activation in each round, right? To really keep up with the losses, so to score that challenge unanswered, for example. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, I think the deck looks really nice, right? I think it's like a strong 3, potentially a 4 out of 5 Warband. I maybe a bit generous with the 4 there. Definitely a strong 3 out of 5 Warband, and a lot of good synergy here between the cards. So hopefully this was even more helpful than my previous reviews. So I actually like this change of less arbitrary judging good, bad, pass, and so forth. But like, this is the cards we have. If we're playing rivals, we are going to use all the cards. How can we use them in the best possible way? So make sure to like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell button as to not miss out on any further content. Leave a comment on your thoughts on this particular Warband and Underworlds in general. Is it in a good place? Is Magic too strong? Whatever. Just get your opinions out there, and I will answer in due time. So without further ado, take care. Bye.
Critical focus.